They came and put the things that held us together, and we can no longer reason as one. And he said, we may have sent the white man away, but what about our brothers whose minds they have infected and infested? And there is no shortage of them. So Africa can and will arise. And if you look at the continent of Africa, she has always been conscious.
Africa must never tell us what to do. The same United States, which is furious at being cut off from the riches of Burkina Faso, cannot tell us what to do. We stand with Captain Traore. We stand with Traore because we know that Traore stands for the unity of Africa. We are Traore, and Traore is all of us. If they kill Traore, you must know they would have created another wound in the continent of Africa. We must defend him the same way we defend the unity of Africa. We must defend China for defying the USA and telling the USA to go to hell because they don't understand how the tariffs works. Donald Trump is an enemy of himself and all of us.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Now, this is the time for the black community to come together and unite. A time like this when everyone else is fighting Africa, when the oppression is so much on African black people. Now, this is a call to all of us who are watching this video that we need to come together, build the motherland, and make sure that we are united and never divided as before. This is the time for us to try unity and see whatever it can do for us as people of black community. So let's watch this video, then have a really quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
If it is the history of the continent, slavery that has been mentioned, if it is colonization that has been spoken to, if it is neocolonization that has been spoken to, if it is in describing the continent of Africa as having been divided so very arbitrarily in Berlin in 1884 and 1885, that has been spoken to. And we have been told so very correctly how that continues to bedevil the continent of Africa and to undermine our attempts at unity. Those of you who are students of history will remember that in 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and in 1964 in Cairo, Egypt, the debate was, should we redraw the boundaries? It was agreed by the founding fathers then that that would be an exercise in fueling conflict, and that if we were moving towards unity, then redrawing boundaries was unnecessary. The OAU was, of course, founded in 1963, a weak organization which, as it were, introduced the concept of inviolability of boundaries and placed emphasis on sovereignty. We have been told that that could very well be the reason why Africa's growth has been stunted. There are those, and there's them who has told us so very effectively that upon consultation with the gods, he has been told very useful things, and the gods are right in the revelation that they have made. The gods are right in saying that we have suffered in many ways and continue to do so, and that therefore the post-independence African country or countries are bedeviled by many things. That could be a reason. It has also been said that part of the reason why we have not realized our potential is because we make the wrong choices. And that could very well be true. And my brother who spoke about choices so very well told us that it all rests on the choices that you make. And you who are Christians will remember that at critical moments, even in the Christian tradition, it has always been a question of choices. If you read the book of 1 Kings at chapter 18, when there is conflict in that little place called Israel, Elijah summons them and says, choose you now. If Baal is God, bring the 450 disciples of Baal and the 400 of Asherah who dined with Jezebel. And if God is God, let him be worshipped. If Baal is Baal, let him be worshipped. Perhaps that is the reason why we are where we are. We never make the right choices. We choose Baal when we should be choosing God. There are those who have said possibly, and you see this choice if you read the book of Joshua chapter 24, when he calls the Israelites and tells them, choose you now. Do you want to worship the gods whom your ancestors worshipped before they crossed the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell? As for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. Perhaps we are not serving the gods, and that the gods are angry. And in the anger, they continue to visit pain upon us. So there is a sense in which all and many things have been talked about. But Africa sometimes judges ourselves very harshly and with a jaundiced sense of history. The post-colonial African state, the oldest post-colonial African state is Ghana, 66 years only. Nigeria, 63 years only. And we often forget these very important and immortal words of John Henry Clark when he said that all African countries, upon regaining independence, started to conduct their affairs on the basis of systems of governments that were borrowed from Europe, and that none of them will ever succeed on the basis of borrowed systems. And as if he were a Jewish prophet, he is being proven right on a daily basis. Because whenever we in the African countries think that we have identified the problem and that we have identified the antidote, when we apply the antidote, new wounds appear. That has been the state of Africa, and that continues to be our state. And therefore, when we judge Africa, we must ask ourselves, from whose lens are we judging Africa? When in 1965, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah wrote the book Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, and the Most Dangerous, he was right, and he was overthrown for it, because the colonizer left but never left. And if you have any doubt, see what is happening in Niger, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, in Mali. They are alive and well. And Africa remains the only continent in the world that is still referred to as Francophone, Anglophone, Lusophone, and now we are beginning to even call it Russophone and Sinophone and Indophone. There is a sense in which we must never forget this, so that when we are judging Africa, we ought to judge her on the basis and upon the realization that the headwinds that stand on our path are numerous, and that there is no shortage of fifth columnists within our ranks. The SMO spoke, and if the SMO were to speak a little longer, he would have reminded you of what Chinua Achebe said in Things Fall Apart. The Bible is now the greatest instrument in creating false industries in the continent of Africa. And that is not to be celebrated. It is to be frowned upon. And we who claim to be Christians, and I normally use this very deliberately, we claim to be Christians. As to whether we are is another debate. We'll only discover that a little later when we are in heaven. And therefore, when we talk about rediscovering, we are saying that it was once discovered. But let us situate the Bible in its proper place. Christianity as we know it today in the continent of Africa was midwifed to us in the continent through Europe, through the missionaries. When they came, they were reading the very same Bible that we are reading today. When they sat in Berlin and were dividing the continent of Africa, they were reading the same Bible that we are reading today. The same Bible in which, in Paul's letter to the Galatians at chapter 3:28, he says, there are no Jews, no Gentiles, no slave, no free, no woman, no man. They read that verse. It was not interpolated later after they came. They read it. But they came here and conquered us. They came here and discriminated against us. The same Bible. They were being mentored by that very same Bible. They came here when they had divided the body of Christ. The English had appropriated the religion in 1534, and they now had their Anglican church, complete with the monarch as its head. The Scots had appropriated their own, and they had the Presbyterian church. The Greeks had their Greek Orthodox. The Armenians, the Armenian Orthodox. The Roman Catholics were even bolder. They called it the Roman Catholic Church. So that even when they are in Uganda, it's not Ugandan Catholic Church, it is the Roman Catholic Church. And you are going there and you are saying you are Roman Catholic Church. In apartheid South Africa, they are the Dutch Reformed Church, which became the foundation stone upon which apartheid was articulated in 1948 by Hendrik Verwoerd and his cohorts. So the Bible has been misused. Don't be cheated. Let's not be nice to each other because we are Christians. The Bible has been misused. It has been used to support slavery. It has been used to support colonization. It has been used to pervert the truth. That is the Bible that we are saying we ought to rediscover. So when we are gathered here as Christians and we are talking about rediscovery of mentorship in the Bible, we must have a spirit that is a questioning spirit. When His Grace was preaching to us, he said, we must always be nice before we are good. Not always. And I've always talked about two approaches to be found in the Bible. One is of John the Baptist and Herodias. It's a dangerous path where you go out into the public and condemn evil. The only thing that you must know is that when you follow that path, Salome will ask for your head. But there are circumstances when it is necessary. Then there are circumstances when it is necessary to follow the path that His Grace has suggested. Read the conversation between Nathan and David and what he did to the wife of Prophet Uriah. He comes and tells him, in this place there was a person who had a lamb. Circumstances define which method you use. And in a forum such as this, we now live in a world where as Christians we are also very pretentious. We don't speak the truth as it ought to be spoken. Are standing in the way of our realization of the fuller potential of the utilization of land, because land is a major factor of production. And if that major factor of production is not dealt with in a manner that is modern or accommodative of the modern realities, then the development that we talk about is hampered in many ways. And once again, one may ask, how does leadership and resilience come into play? And I'll be able to contextualize. You are surveyors, you are land valuers, and you have all the professions that are present here under your umbrella body. Where is the original sin that we are committing? The original sin is at the level of training. How are we training people at our universities and institutions of learning? If you go to many African universities, if you go to the universities in this country that train people in the survey department, the equipment is as old as when I was at the university, which is over 30 years ago. In other words, you are using things that are completely outmoded, competing with the Koreans who have gone into the realm of technology. You are competing with the Chinese, you are competing with the Europeans, you are competing, these are the people that you are competing with. If you look at current developments, for example, in an area that is germane or relevant to your own profession, look at the infrastructure that is being undertaken by the Chinese across the continent of Africa. How are you involved? When they were doing the expressway in Nairobi, how many of you were involved? Was your association involved? Were Kenyan engineers involved? Were Kenyan valuers involved? No. You are busy dealing with petty stuff, eating the crumbs while the dinner is on the table. This is the situation in which you find yourselves. And that is not only true of Kenya, it is true in all countries. I'm told they are my friends here from Nigeria. If you go to the development that are taking place in Abuja, who is doing the work? If you go to the beautiful roads that are found in Akwa Ibom, in Uyo, in Akwa Ibom, who is doing the roads? If you go to the roads that are being done in Lagos, if you go to the railway that is being done in between Addis and Djibouti, if you go to the road that is being done between Hargeisa and Barbara, who is doing them? If you go to the developments taking place in Juba or the development taking place in Kinshasa or in Botswana, who is doing them? It is not you African professionals. What you African professionals and we African professionals are doing, we are engaged in little surveys in rural Kenya or rural Africa, planting beacons. This is what we are doing. In other words, we are not playing in the big league. And if we are not playing in the big league, what it means is that we are not controlling our development. Today, if I ask you surveyors, particularly this institution, who should know the location of the fiber optic that runs subterraneanly in the Indian Ocean, you do not know. You have no idea. If I were to ask those who are here in Mombasa, where the cables in respect of all these things are running, you do not know. In other words, we are not in control. And if you are not in control, you cannot determine the agenda. Today, and my good friend, the lecturer there, will be talking about artificial intelligence. We are now in the realm, she'll tell you, we are now in the realm of the 4th industrial revolution, segueing into the 5th industrial revolution. Those of you who are training now as surveyors and land valuers, we are going to have equipment which will take care of the work that 100 of you are doing. In other words, in the next 10 years, you'll be irrelevant. You'll be dinosaurs. Your training will have no meaning. And the question is, how do you make sure that you remain relevant? Because we are going to bring in equipment here which we do not make. You know, sometimes when I hear computer scientists in Africa saying, I'm a computer guru, I say, which guru? Which guru are you? Because whose computer are you using? Says, I'm an expert on the internet. Whose internet? I'm an expert on cloud computing. Whose cloud? You are not in control. You can be switched off like this until the day that we are in charge. Somebody says, I have a Twitter account, I have a WhatsApp account, which is encrypted from end to... Who has encrypted it? That you have so much faith in it. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. Uber, being controlled from San Francisco in the United States of America. Bolt, being controlled from Estonia. Leadership is about agility. In my younger life until now, I'm a martial artist. And one of the greatest martial artists and philosophers is Bruce Lee, with his art called Jide Kunedu. And he says that a leader must be agile like a martial artist, agile like water. If it is in a glass, it takes the shape of the glass. If it is in a bottle, it takes the shape of a bottle, but it doesn't change. It can be solid, it can be gas, it can be liquid, but it's still water. Leadership. A leader must have vision. You've got to see the big picture. Do we have such leaders? Whether it's in the political arena, you are typical African so-called leader. I don't use leader when I'm talking about African politicians, because it's an insult to the word. Their agenda is thinking from one election to the other. No big ideas. You go to China, see big thinking. The Chinese are now thinking about how they will relate to Africa 100 years from today. 100 years from today. None of us will be alive.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from now. A lot of things have been said about some great leaders who lived in Africa, and those leaders who fought for the unity of the motherland. Now, you must be asking your questions why someone can stay in power for over 40 years. Someone can go ahead and turn to be a dictator in Africa for 40 years as long as he or she is a dictator and a puppet to the West, a person who takes orders and obeys the Western policies here in Africa. They are not interested in those people. You can never hear anything negative being said about them. You can hear nothing being said about their countries. All you hear is that they praise the democracy in those countries. They praise the elections and all these other things. But what becomes when a leader in Africa rises to power and then he considers and he talks about the motherland and he wants to unite the whole African continent? This is where now the problem begins. They always have a problem. The Western media always have a problem with great leaders in Africa. They have always played the same games, the victim games, you know. When I say that, I mean, now, you must know someone called Gaddafi. You must know someone called Patrice Lumumba. You must know Thomas Sankara. There are so many other. You must know the one who died mysteriously in Tanzania, John Magufuli. All these great leaders in Africa who said no to neocolonialism, these great leaders who said no to being puppets of the West. You know, stories were being told about them, how they were dictators and how they killed their own people and how they misused the resources of their own countries. But you must be asking yourself, if they talk about Patrice Lumumba, if they talk about a person like Gaddafi, it is under their leadership that the people enjoyed the most. And even their people did not understand why the Western powers were so upset by their own leaders. Now, you come to Africa and see the mess in so many other countries. A person has been in power for almost 40 years, right? They have no problem with them. As long as they take the Western orders and the Western policies and they implement them to their people in Africa, that's all right. But boom, a problem comes when someone comes in power and he does not want to associate himself with the Western countries. that becomes a problem. And they term that president a puppet. We must sit down and discuss this as black people. We've let down so many of our leaders. Now, just from the diaspora, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these are great leaders who spoke about the unity of black people, who spoke about the greatness of the black community. They were mysteriously assassinated by the Western powers just because they were seen as a threat. And you know, the biggest threat you can be to the Western powers is speaking the truth and trying to unite Africa, because they know in a divided Africa, in a divided black people, they thrive. Now, this is when they come in, get cheap labor from Africa. They import people as slaves to their countries. Now, come to Africa and see the mentality in Africa. They think everyone who lives in Europe or in the US is a super millionaire, and they all want to go there. There is the colonial mentality which still exists in Africa, and it has been widely spread across Africa. It's like the gospel. When it catches fire from the northern side, you'll find it in the eastern, southern, and central parts of the whole place. Now, in Africa, everyone thinks everyone who comes from the US is super rich, and everyone in Africa applies for visa. There is a time in my own country, around 20 million people tried to apply for the green card, which they take almost 2,000 to 3,000 people, but almost 20 million people applied for the green card. It is so crazy, the colonial mentality that we have and how much we've been obsessed by these Western countries, and we want to go there. It is good when we learn from people like Julius Malema. I do not agree with so many things sometimes he says, but I agree with the fact that he calls for the unity of black people. They always have a problem with him just because of saying the truth and calling out the children of Africa and all black people in the world to come together, unite, and develop their own motherland. What's the essence of a black man running away from Africa, being a millionaire in the US, then building the US and living Africa as a third world country? You must ask yourself, now they started classifying countries as first world, second world, third world, and all African countries have been classified as third world countries. And if this is the case, they made Africa poor for their countries to be first world. And if we want to talk about this, if there was a debate actually, you must ask yourself, UK, the US, France have the largest gold mineral reserves in the world, but they do not have mineral deposits. They do not have gold mines. They do not have all these natural resources, but they have the biggest gold reserves, mineral reserves in the world. They exploit Africa and take them to their countries. They leave the people in Africa languishing in poverty. They leave the people in Africa without food, without water, and some even are left landless. They do not have any land because using their puppets in these countries, they take the land which belongs to the given community or people, and they start mining whatever they want from that place. Then the people who should initially benefit from all this are left out. And we continue with the same way year after year. When we have someone like Ibrahim Traore, who is coming out to say that we must unite Africa, we must bring the children of Africa who are in the diaspora back to Africa, it becomes a problem to them. And we in Africa are now opening our eyes. The people in Africa are now learning that our leaders have not been a problem. These Pan-Africanists, I single-handedly have a problem with puppets, all puppets in Africa, including my own president. I have problems with puppets all over Africa because These are the people who have made this continent the way it is today. It is because of these people who have allowed US military bases in Africa, all over Africa, the French military bases all over Africa. Now, everyone wants to bring their military bases to spy on whatever is happening in Africa. You ask yourself, why is it that there is no any other African country that have a military base outside their own country? Even my own country, we do not have a military base in our neighboring country. And we go ahead, and these puppet leaders have given so much into whatever their leaders are saying to them, their masters, I mean. Then they have destroyed the economy in Africa. There are no good roads in Africa. There is no peace in some parts of Africa, just because the US, France, Belgium, the UK, and so many other countries have interest in our countries. They are doing this at the expense of a common man in Africa. Then they go ahead and take our idle youth. They take us who are very idle in Africa, give us guns, and they leave us in the fields to fight our own people. We do this placing the master, killing our own people. See whatever is happening today in DRC Congo. Black people fighting black people. When it happens in Africa, it's nothing. It's just tribal clash and all this. This is how their media reports. But when Russia is fighting Ukraine, now it becomes a global crisis, that inflation has happened globally just because two countries are fighting. But when Africa is fighting, no, don't say that. It's a tribal clash between two people who are not two groups of people who have a misunderstanding, and that is not a big problem to the world, But we must change the narrative, and the only way we can change this narrative is by one, accepting who we are and accepting that we've made mistakes before, and the mistakes we made in the past should not define who we are, and we should not allow ourselves entirely to believe in the Western policies which have destroyed us. Now, I'll talk about a single professor who said that your enemy cannot give you tactics to win against them. And Professor PLO Lumumba has also talked about this, that your enemy cannot be your advisor again on how to win. They'll always tell you on how to lose. They'll always advise you in the easiest way possible to lose in anything that you do, so that they can achieve whatever they want. If I was to go in a ring with you, maybe if we were going to have a fight, I'll take most of my time to know your weaknesses, your strengths, and all these other things, because this is whatever it takes to win a match, And anything that I tell you will be somehow maybe to get more information on how to win against you. And anything I tell you will therefore mean that I'm helping you to lose and helping you to fail. So I'll actually be trying to know your strengths and your weaknesses. In this case, we as Africa, we as black people in the diaspora, in Africa, all over the world, in the Caribbean, we must come together. Now, go look at Latin America. Go look at whatever is happening in the Caribbean. Come look at whatever is happening in Africa. We are so much divided. And this is the only time we have to unite ourselves. If we are not going to unite ourselves, it's going to be so messy. We must come and actually try as much as we can to unite ourselves. And if we are not going to unite ourselves, it's going to be actually a big problem. Brothers and sisters, we can say so many other things, but without the unity of black people around the world, we are not going to achieve it. Malema won't achieve it for Africa. Traore won't achieve it for Africa. PLO Lumumba won't achieve it for Africa. If Africans do not decide to achieve it for themselves, this is a wake-up call to all of us who are watching this video. Those in the Caribbean, I mean, those in Jamaica, those in Barbados, those in St. Kitts, everyone just watching from the Caribbean, from the diaspora, from Latin America, and from Europe, from Africa. This is a wake-up call for all of us to unite and say no to neocolonialism. We've suffered a lot. Our brothers have suffered a lot. And we continue suffering just because of the ignorance we have. If we can stop this ignorance we have, if we could come together and unite, nothing can be so hard. So, brothers and sisters, we can talk from today, tomorrow, and the coming day. The greatest thing that we've never tried is unity. So this is our time to unite. This is our time to come together and say no to neocolonialism, say no to the oppressive system that comes from the Western countries. Thank you so much for having taken our time to watch this video. I appreciate so much. If it's your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, and commenting on the videos.